Somewhere in Shanxi province, in a small clinic, things aren't looking great. The doctor checks on the elderly man. "Elder, your tumor has gotten worse. How's the headache?" The old man replies, "It's getting worse, but I can still handle it." After a short pause, he looks the doctor in the eyes. "Just be honest with me. How much time do I have left?" The doctor takes a deep breath before saying, "Your inner chi is protecting your blood vessels for now, but soon, the pain will be unbearable. You won't be able to wake up one day, elder." At the door of the clinic, the old man pauses. "I guess there's no need to return for my treatment anymore, Physician Sok. Thank you for everything you've done." As he turns to leave, he adds, "While I'm still alive, you must come to our family for a meal sometime." The physician watches him leave, thinking to himself, "Elder Liu Jinshan, please take care of yourself." Liu Jinshan thinks to himself while walking, "Now I have to start sorting things out. Everything I've built in my entire life, our family, the Liu family, this precious Liu family, will be continued by my son and my grandchildren. I have no regret, however. It's a shame that I won't be able to see my youngest granddaughter grow up, a special child born with the immortal sound body constitution, a talented child who will definitely bring honor to our family when she grows up." Liu Jinshan approaches the Liu house, but a strange, ominous feeling hits him as he nears the gate. His senses sharpen, and the unmistakable smell of blood fills the air. He pushes through the crowd of people murmuring, "What in the world is going on?" "Move aside," he yells, breaking through to see the unimaginable, his family destroyed, bodies scattered everywhere. "Chione, Daekwane," he calls out desperately, his heart pounding. What on earth happened here? His daughter-in-law is lying among the bodies, and he can't hold back the tears. "Open your eyes, please," he whispers, but it's too late. Everyone is gone. "I've lost everything." The bystanders in the crowd begin to whisper, "This is horrible. The Liu family didn't even have any enemies, so why?" "Wait, stop, Elder," someone yells from the crowd. "Elder, you can't. Who's going to avenge your family?" Liu Jinshan, holding a knife to his neck, thinks to himself, "Avenge with this old, sick body? Against whom? It's meaningless." He closes his eyes, a tear slipping down his cheek. "I'd rather die now and join my family." Liu Jinshan hears a faint cry nearby and drops the knife in shock. He quickly opens the barrel to find his grandchild crying inside. "Soul!" he yells, rushing to her side. He thinks to himself, "This must be the work of those bastards who wanted to eradicate our family. They will definitely come back when they find out she's still alive." Liu Jinshan hastily entered the manor. Liu Jinshan walks out of the manor, gripping a spear tightly in his hand. He looks around at the gathered people and shouts, "Everyone in Jinyang County, I need your help. Please help me bury my family. I want to do it myself, but I can't stay. With all of you here as witnesses, I swear, before I die, I'll make sure this fire dragon divine spear is soaked in the blood of those bastards who did this to my family. I, Liu Jinshan, won't rest until I do." In his mind, he thinks, "My sons, my daughters-in-law, my grandchildren, I'm so sorry." Liu Jinshan dashes into the forest, his breathing heavy. "It's been decades since I last used my body lightning arts. Every inch of my sick body is screaming, but survival comes first." Suddenly, out of nowhere, an assassin strikes. Jinshan reacts on instinct, leaning back just in time to dodge the blade. An ambush. He's fast, but his movements are simple. I still have a long way to go. Without hesitation, he throws a powerful kick at the assassin's face. "Let's finish this quickly." The assassin flinches, bracing for impact, but when he opens his eyes, Jinshan is on the ground instead. Jinshan grits his teeth. "The sound of my back cracking. As expected, my body can't handle these martial arts anymore. How frustrating. If I were just 10 years younger, this third-rate bastard would already be dead. But right now, Soul's safety is all that matters. If his companions show up, we're done for." With no time to waste, he forces himself up and starts running. The assassin hesitates for a second before snapping out of it and chasing after him. Jinshan yells back, "You bastard! Even as an assassin, do you have no shred of compassion? Is it really necessary to go after a newborn baby and an old man like me?" But in his mind, a plan is already forming. Running away like this is a disadvantage in my condition. If I don't take him out in one move, I'll be the one who suffers. The assassin dashes toward him, a killing intent in his eyes. Jinshan grips his spear tightly. There's only one chance. He channels his remaining energy into his weapon. The assassin leaps into the air, going for the kill. Jinshan's eyes narrow. Got him! With a deep breath, he unleashes Lion's Roar. A powerful shockwave blasts through the air. The assassin wobbles mid-air, his balance shattered. His weapons slip from his hand. Jinshan doesn't waste a second. Liu family spear technique, first technique, pursuing extreme flash. In an instant, his spear tears through the assassin's chest, pinning him straight to a tree. Jinshan scoffs, smacking the assassin's face. Didn't I tell you to stop chasing me, you rude little bastard? The impact knocks off the assassin's mask, revealing his face. Jinshan narrows his eyes. As expected, I don't recognize him, but I need to find out who sent him. He studies the man's trembling body. Not that it matters. Someone like him would rather die than talk. His gaze shifts to the assassin's, a strange dragon tattoo standing out against his bloodied skin. This symbol, if nothing else, this might be a clue. Before he can think further, Soul's soft cries snap him back to reality. Jinshan holds her close and gently whispers, "Our Soul must have been scared, huh? But don't worry, my child. Grandpa will definitely protect you." Soul smiles at him. Night falls, and the forest is wrapped in darkness. Jinshan and Soul sit by a small fire, their only source of warmth. Jinshan looks down at the baby in his arms and sighs. "Child, you must be hungry, right? Just wait a little longer." As he stirs the pot, his thoughts drift. I grabbed some cow's milk and a few supplies from a nearby village in a rush. Who would have thought I'd end up stealing? Something I've never done in my life. Seriously, my later years are truly miserable. Once the milk is ready, he carefully pours it into a small container and brings it to Soul's lips. "Here you go, Soul. It's ready. Since I boiled it, it's safe to drink now." Soul eagerly drinks, and Jinshan watches with a soft smile. "That's it. You're eating so well. Good job." After finishing, Soul rubs her tiny belly cutely. Jinshan chuckles to himself, but his mind remains heavy. There's no helping it. I'll do anything to protect Soul. Suddenly, a sharp, unbearable pain shoots through Jinshan's head. His vision blurs, and the bowl of soup slips from his hands, crashing to the ground. The tumor, "I've never had a headache this bad before." A piercing scream escapes his lips as the agony intensifies. His body trembles, and memories of his conversation with Physician Seok flood his mind. "Elder, please take this, just in case. Didn't you say medicine would no longer work?" "This isn't medicine. It's a poison called the nerve suppression pill. Using poison to fight poison, the pill's toxins will suppress your tumor and prolong your life for now. Just in case of an emergency, please take these with you." Jinshan grits his teeth. "I'm losing my mind. I know what this poison is, a drug used to torture prisoners, causing unbearable pain without killing them. Even a strong martial artist would feel like his entire body is being torn apart." He looks at Soul, her tiny face twisted in distress as she cries louder and louder. "I can't die. I can't leave Seol all alone." With trembling hands, he grabs the pill and swallows it. A violent surge of poison chi erupts inside him. His skin turns purple, his pupils contract, and his veins bulge beneath his skin. The pain is excruciating. He screams, clutching his head, yanking his hair as his body convulses violently. The forest echoes with his agonized cries, piercing through the silent night. Time becomes a blur. Darkness fades into dawn. As the pain slowly subsides, Jinshan lies there, exhausted, staring at the sky. How much time do I even have left? Jinshan lies on the ground, breathing heavily. Luckily, the poison chi seems to have subsided. For now, I'm still alive, but I don't know when my headache will strike again. Even if I survive the poison, there's a limit. I have to stay alive, at least until I can ensure Soul's safety. His eyes shift toward Soul, peacefully sleeping beside him. The sight of her tiny, innocent face strengthens his resolve. He sits up, his expression turning steely with determination. There's only one way. I need a body that can both cure my tumor and protect Seol from danger. Body reconstruction, a forbidden technique that reshapes bones and flesh to create a body perfectly suited for martial arts. He crosses his legs into the lotus position, thinking through the process. To unclog the governor and conception vessels for body reconstruction, I need at least 180 years worth of inner chi, but right now, I only have about 150 years worth. His fists clench. Can this sick, dying body even hold on? If I train, it'll take years. No, even longer than that. With a deep sigh, he pulls his robe tighter around him. Until yesterday, I had no regrets about my life. But now, there's only one thing on my mind. Jinshan gazes at the distant mountains, his eyes filled with unshakable resolve. I, Liu Jinshan, Seoul's grandfather, will never die. With that, he rises to his feet and begins his journey toward the mountains. In a small village, Liu Jinshan caught the scent of food drifting from a trio of beggars cooking nearby. Approaching them, he studied their meal with interest. The chubby beggar scowled at the sudden presence of an outsider. Taking note of the knots at their waists, Liu Jinshan quickly assessed their ranks. One was a first-rank disciple, while the other two were second-rank. They belonged to the beggar sect. This wasn't just a chance for food. There was an opportunity to extract some useful information as well. The chubby one looked ready to shout in protest, but was swiftly silenced by the eldest of the three, a bald beggar whose head shone as if freshly polished. With a sharp smack to the younger man's head, he scolded him. As Liu Jinshan settled in, the older beggar suddenly excused himself, claiming he had forgotten the salt. He hurriedly pulled the other two aside, his voice dropping to a whisper. Away from Liu's earshot, he muttered his suspicions. There was no doubt this was Liu Jinshan of the Liu family. Convinced that capturing him would be simple due to his age, he ordered the others to wait for his signal before launching an attack. Returning with a forced smile, the old beggar casually mentioned that the food already had salt in it. Liu Jinshan, patting his belly in satisfaction, agreed that the taste was just right. Seated nearby, Xiao enjoyed the last of the broth, her contented expression deepening their shock. As Liu Jinshan watched her, Liu smirked. He tells them he is feeling a strange satisfaction. Wonders if it was because he had found people connected to those responsible for his children's deaths. One of the beggars stiffened, realizing that Liu had overheard their conversation. Without hesitation, he ordered the others to attack. Two beggars rushed at Liu, but he remained calm. With just a spoon, he blocked their strikes, twisting one of their arms from the recoil. The second beggar attempted a sneak attack from behind, but Liu swiftly threw the spoon, striking him with precision and knocking him unconscious. The leader of the group attacked from above, swinging his staff with full force. Liu countered effortlessly, breaking the weapon on impact before grabbing the man by the neck. Without mercy, he began his interrogation, demanding to know if the beggar sect was behind the attack on his family. His grip tightened as he made it clear that if the truth wasn't revealed, he would make them suffer. One of the remaining beggars panicked and desperately tried to explain. He insisted they had no connection to the ones who destroyed Liu's family. They had only come for the bounty set by the Murim Alliance. To prove it, he pulled out a wanted poster and handed it over. Liu read the words carefully. The poster accused him of destroying his own family and losing his mind after falling into qi deviation. Rage boiled inside him. Without hesitation, he crushed the paper in his fist, his fury growing even stronger. Deep in the mountains, Liu Jinshan sat in meditation, his thoughts clouded with grief and anger. The Murim Alliance had issued a wanted order against him, filled with nothing but lies. But a bigger question haunted him. How were they connected to the destruction of his family? If the Murim Alliance was truly responsible, then his enemy wasn't just a single sect, it was the entire martial world. He exhaled slowly, his gaze fixed on the massive boulder before him. Even if he devoted 5 years to body reconstruction, it would be no different from trying to topple a mountain with a mere pebble. But if the Murim Alliance was truly behind it, then it didn't matter how long it took. Even if it required 10 million strikes, he would not stop until they were reduced to rubble. With that thought, he drove his fist into the boulder. Cracks spread like lightning across its surface before the massive rock crumbled into dust. And yet, the question still gnawed at him. Why would an alliance that claimed to uphold righteousness commit such an atrocity? Nearby, Xiao sat watching, her round eyes filled with curiosity. He turned to her and handed her a bamboo cup, prompting her to drink. Instead of taking a sip, she suddenly tossed it away. Liu Jinshan's reflexes kicked in, catching it just before the liquid spilled. Sighing, he waved a rabbit skewer in front of her. Instantly, her eyes widened, and a bit of drool escaped. Amused, he teased her with the scent, making her reach for it. If she wanted to eat, she would have to call him Grandpa. Without hesitation, Xiao opened her mouth and spoke the word clearly. Liu Jinshan froze. It was impossible. She was already speaking. His astonishment grew as he realized just how extraordinary she was. Born with the immortal sound and body constitution, she was developing at an unimaginable rate. He decided against giving her meat just yet. Instead, he resolved to find ingredients suitable for her porridge. Under the cover of night, Liu Jinshan entered a small village. He had no idea how far the wanted order had spread, so caution was necessary. Spotting a kind-looking woman, he approached her and asked for food for his child. Moved by Xiao's pitiful state, the woman offered an alternative. She had no food, but she did have breast milk and could feed the child herself. After a moment of hesitation, Liu Jinshan agreed and handed Xiao over. The woman, blushing, requested that he turn around for privacy. Respecting her modesty, he did as asked, thanking her sincerely. However, the silence that followed felt unnatural. A sudden movement caught his attention, and he turned back, only to see the woman sprinting away, shouting about how she was going to be rich. Liu swiftly subdued the woman, restraining her with ease. With one arm holding her in place, he reached for his grandchild, ensuring her safety. As he steadied himself, his eyes caught sight of a wanted poster nearby. His gaze immediately locked onto a wanted poster nailed to a nearby wall. His own face stared back at him, alongside Xiao's. The poster claimed he had kidnapped the child and promised a hefty reward to anyone who returned her to the Murim Alliance. His expression darkened. If this notice had reached even a small village like this, then it was safe to assume it had already spread throughout Shanxi province. It wasn't just martial artists he had to worry about. Now, even commoners would be after them. Nearby, a group of villagers gathered at a notice board, discussing recent events. One of them scoffed, mocking Liu Jinshan's supposed descent into madness. Another spoke of the great Bayek family, who had been found dead overnight, completely wiped out. Liu Jinshan's eyes narrowed. The Bayek family, their clan had been even stronger than his, filled with first-rate martial artists. Yet not a single infant corpse had been found among the dead. Rumors had spread of a figure seen carrying the children away. His gut told him this wasn't a coincidence. The same force that had destroyed his family had now targeted the Bayeks, but who were they and why? His thoughts turned to Xiao. When she was born with the immortal sound and body constitution, the Murim Alliance had sent an elixir to strengthen her qi, calling it a joyous occasion for all of Jianghu. But now, everything was clear. They had known about her potential from the beginning. Their goal had never been to celebrate her birth. They had always intended to take her. A group of beggars appeared, pointing directly at him. Accusations flew, claiming he had stolen from them. Liu Jinshan sighed, regretting that he had let them live earlier. Before he could act, a shadowy figure stepped forward. His voice was cold and sharp, carrying the confidence of a seasoned killer. Declaring himself the best assassin in the region, he made it clear he would be the one to deliver Liu Jinshan to the Murim Alliance. The assassin scanned the surroundings, searching for Liu Jinshan, but he was gone. A massive shadow loomed behind him. In the figure's mind, even if I lose myself, I will kill you, all of you. Liu Jinshan stood there, his skin darkening, his expression twisted with rage, his very presence overwhelming. He was losing control. Then a voice rang in his ears. Grandpa, it was Xiao's voice. The assassin and the surrounding beggars turned in the direction of the voice, but there was no one there. Confusion flickered in their eyes. Meanwhile, Liu Jinshan snapped out of his fury, his mind clearing just enough to realize what had happened. He had lost control completely. He had almost fallen into qi deviation. If he had seen blood in that moment, he might have become a mindless berserker, exactly as the Murim Alliance intended. Glancing down at his grandchild, his expression softened. He gently ruffled Xiao's hair, a faint smile tugging at his lips. She had saved him without even knowing it. The realization hit hard. The entire world was now hunting them. There was no safe place left. If they wanted to survive, they had to disappear, somewhere no one could ever reach them. 2 months later. Deep within a dense forest, Liu Jinshan finally let out a sigh of relief. Before him stood an old, abandoned house, hidden away from the world. Despite years of neglect, it was surprisingly well preserved, as if waiting for someone to return. Stepping inside, his gaze landed on a jade box sitting on a wooden shelf. With a click, the box opened, revealing a set of finely crafted flying needles. Beside them, a 7-string zither rested in pristine condition. Whoever had lived here was no ordinary person. Night had fallen, and inside the house, Liu Jinshan carefully fed Xiao. A memory surfaced, this brat, the way she ate just like the youngest when he was little. His thoughts drifted to his daughter-in-law, regret settling in his chest. He should have cherished them more while he had the chance. Xiao looked up at him, noticing his teary eyes. Tilting her head, she mumbled, "Cry," attempting to say crying. Liu Jinshan quickly denied it, standing abruptly. "I forgot to turn off the furnace," he declared before hurrying outside. Once alone, he sighed, rubbing his forehead. Embarrassing. He had shown a pathetic side of himself in front of his granddaughter. Staring into the night sky, he pondered his life. The constant wandering, the thirst for vengeance, was that really the path he wanted? Revenge could wait. Right now, raising Seol to be healthy was all that mattered. Nearby, a group of bandits gathered, discussing recent events. Liu Jinshan, hidden from sight, listened intently. Their leader was furious, scolding his men for failing to eliminate a Wudang sect disciple. A violent conflict was inevitable. More importantly, this mountain was no longer a place to remain unnoticed. One of the bandits suddenly sensed something, calling out to whoever was hiding. Liu Jinshan stepped forward, unbothered by their numbers. With a calm expression, he stated that it was rude to speak to an elder in such a manner. He then advised them to inform their leader that he had moved into a house nearby, and that unless they were prepared for a fight, they should stay away. The bandits sneered, mocking his arrogance. One of them lunged forward, blade in hand, but with a flick of his finger, Liu Jinshan sent the attacker flying, shattering his sword in an instant. Another rushed in, only to find Liu already behind him. A single palm strike sent the man sprawling. The remaining bandits hesitated, but before they could retreat, a massive figure emerged, their vice leader. Unlike the others, this one carried himself like a real fighter. Without hesitation, the vice leader swung his axe. Confident in his own strength, he believed one strike would be enough. Yet, with a single palm strike, Liu Jinshan sent him flying, leaving the rest of the bandits in stunned silence. Repeating his warning, Liu Jinshan ordered them to leave and never return. Some scoffed, unwilling to back down, but before anyone could act, a sharp pain shot through his head. His vision blurred. He swayed but forced himself to remain standing. There was no time for weakness. He had to return home to Seol. Reaching for a pill, he swallowed it without hesitation. A strangled cry escaped him as the effects hit. The bandits whispered among themselves, suspecting he had taken a nerve suppression pill. Seeing his weakened state, they seized the opportunity. Blow after blow rained down. Too exhausted to fight back, Liu Jinshan collapsed, his last conscious thought fixed on Seol. In the darkness, muffled voices surrounded him. The bandits discussed their success, one boasting about how they had subdued him. A sudden slap cut through the air, followed by a pained grunt. The leader's frustration was evident. His men had been careless. As Liu Jinshan's senses returned, he found himself bound in heavy chains, secured to a pole. Panic settled in. How much time had passed? Was Seol safe? A commanding presence entered the scene. A man with a piercing gaze studied him, radiating authority unlike the others. The bandit leader had arrived. Acknowledging his men's rough treatment of the elder, the leader's expression remained unreadable. Meanwhile, Liu Jinshan remained silent, his mind racing with a single question: why had his life been spared? The bandit leader apologized on behalf of his men, but Liu Jinshan had already pieced together the man's intentions. He had no time for their games. Shackled in steel chains, he knew breaking free would require a weapon imbued with internal energy. The bandit leader, feigning regret, remarked that if he had known his elder neighbor was feeling lonely, he would have paid him a visit much sooner. With a deep bow, he expressed his sincerest apologies. Liu Jinshan, unimpressed, signaled that if the man was truly sorry, he should release him first. At the leader's command, one of the battered subordinates scrambled to fetch the key. Before unlocking the restraints, the leader assured Liu Jinshan that he would first remove the chains from his body and then proceed with those on his wrists. However, the moment the chains around Liu Jinshan's legs were loosened, he launched a powerful kick at the bandit leader. Reacting swiftly, the leader blocked the strike, though the sheer force sent him stumbling backward. The overwhelming strength confirmed his suspicions. This old man harbored an immense reservoir of internal energy. Liu Jinshan strained against the remaining chains, attempting to free his bound wrists. Just then, the vice leader, axe in hand, lunged at him, frustrated that the old man refused to stay put. In an instant, Liu Jinshan intercepted the axe with his chains, shattered his bindings, and hurled the vice leader through the door, breaking it in the process. With the vice leader sprawled on the ground, Liu Jinshan used his face as a launch pad, leaping into the air and soaring toward the exit. Outside, the vice leader barked orders for the men to cut Liu Jinshan down. Taking in the overwhelming number of bandits, Liu Jinshan cursed under his breath. One of the men shouted for the archers to fire, and as the bows were drawn, Liu Jinshan realized dodging every arrow would be impossible. Preparing for the worst, he steeled himself to sacrifice an arm if necessary. However, before the archers could loose their arrows, the leader's voice rang out, ordering them to hold their fire. He instructed them to let the old man go. Seizing the opportunity, Liu Jinshan vaulted over the fence and disappeared into the forest. As he sprinted through the trees, only one thought occupied his mind: Seol. He had to reach her. Back at the bandit camp, the leader watched in awe, marveling at Liu Jinshan's mastery of Qinggong. His vice leader, however, was less impressed, fuming over the decision to let the old man escape. He angrily accused Liu Jinshan of being responsible for the men who had recently vanished in the mountains. Before he could say more, the leader cut him off, berating him for making things worse. The fate of the Black Mountain Blade, he warned, now depended on that very old man. Liu Jinshan finally arrived at the old house, his voice echoing through the area as he called out for his granddaughter. Relief washed over him when he saw Xiao running toward him. Without hesitation, he pulled her into a tight embrace, apologizing for leaving her alone. He promised never to do so again. As they held each other, a strange croaking sound interrupted the moment. Liu Jinshan, puzzled, told Xiao to stop making that noise. Only then did he notice the frog in her hands. He stared in disbelief before shaking his head. Of all things she could have caught, a frog, he patted her head, amused at her unexpected talent. Realizing she must be hungry, he suggested they go inside. However, before stepping in, he turned his gaze toward the three bandits he had first encountered. They had been watching everything unfold from the sidelines. Kneeling with their foreheads pressed to the ground, they begged for forgiveness, admitting their grave sin. Liu Jinshan eyed them with disdain. Regardless of their pleas, he knew he could not afford to be entangled with bandits any longer. He commanded them to leave. The leader, however, remained, holding Liu Jinshan's spear. He explained that it had been retrieved from where Liu had collapsed, believing it was an important weapon. The bandit leader then attempted a more diplomatic approach. He pointed out that surviving in the harsh mountains would be difficult, especially with a young granddaughter to care for. Wouldn't it be better, he suggested, if neighbors helped one another? Liu Jinshan saw through the ruse instantly. These bandits had crossed the Wudang sect, and now their fate was as fragile as a candle in the wind. They sought to use him, a martial arts master, to prepare for the inevitable subjugation. His suspicions were confirmed when the leader subtly inquired about his allegiance. Without hesitation, Liu Jinshan made it clear he would not be manipulated. The bandit leader, realizing there was no persuading him, bowed slightly in apology. Before departing, he left behind a bag, claiming it was a gift to make amends. Then, the bandits vanished into the night. Curious, Liu Jinshan inspected the bag, but before he could, Xiao had already buried herself in it, rummaging excitedly. Amused, he waited, wondering what had caught her interest. When she finally emerged, she was holding, of all things, a snake. Before Liu Jinshan could react, the snake lunged. Instinct took over, and he swiftly knocked it away, cursing the bandits for such a twisted joke. No matter how beneficial snake meat was for building resistance, shoving one into a bag was beyond ridiculous. The bandits had left behind actual food as well. Glancing at the provisions, Liu Jinshan had to admit they weren't entirely irredeemable. Time passed in the old house, and the remnants of their meal lay scattered. Fully satisfied for the first time in a while, Liu Jinshan sighed in contentment, stretching out. However, his moment of comfort didn't last. He reminded himself that he could not afford to be idle. Weakened as he was, he had to rebuild his strength before trouble found him again. Settling into a lotus position, he focused on circulating his qi. Achieving complete body reconstruction was imperative, not just for himself, but for Xiao. He had to endure, no matter what. The thought of protecting her and avenging his family pushed him forward. Opening his eyes, he noticed Xiao had mimicked his posture, imitating his meditation. Amused, he acknowledged that starting internal training early was wise. The younger one began, the less turbidity there was in the body, making progress much faster. He placed a hand on her back, aiding her circulation, but as he guided her qi, he felt something extraordinary. Her blood vessels were completely unblocked. Such an absence of obstruction meant her internal energy could accumulate at an unprecedented rate. This was none other than an immortal sound and body. Xiao, however, had already started dozing off mid-meditation. Chuckling to himself, Liu Jinshan decided to push a little further. Using the one heavenly cycle, he guided her qi flow, amazed at her natural ability. Her energy absorption was nearly 20 times that of an average martial artist. At this rate, she would surpass even seasoned warriors. Deciding to let her rest, he carefully laid her down. The Liu family heaven and earth palm technique focused on purity and unyielding spirit, allowing for immense internal energy accumulation. However, its slow progress made it inferior to the techniques of the larger sects, but with Xiao's unique constitution, even that flaw could be negated. Later that night, under the clear sky, Liu Jinshan sat outside, glancing at the jar of liquor the bandits had left. He knew better than to trust them, but the aroma of wild ginseng wine was too tempting. Cooking the snake over an open flame, he indulged in a drink, savoring the taste. It had been too long since he'd enjoyed alcohol. The flavors, the warmth, it reminded him why even rolling in the mud of this world was better than rotting away. However, just as he raised another glass, something caught his eye. A strange white light flickered from the direction of the moon. The sight startled him enough that he nearly spilled his drink. The glowing entity descended toward the ground, moving eerily. Was it a will-o'-the-wisp, or just the effects of alcohol? Drawn by curiosity, he found himself chasing after it, only to discover something straight out of legend. Before him stood a creature spoken of only in hushed whispers, hazy blue fur, glowing eyes, and a sinister aura. It was a blue wolf, a man-eater that had claimed over 1,000 lives across 12 centuries. Liu Jinshan held his breath, watching in horror as it devoured a bandit. If that monster was here, in this very mountain, he faced a dire choice. He could abandon everything and flee with Sial, or he could kill it at all costs. As Liu Jinshan assessed his next move, the blue wolf, sensing his presence behind the bushes, lunged forward with terrifying speed, jaws snapping in an attempt to tear into his flesh. Instinct took over as Liu reacted swiftly, channeling years of training into action. With a decisive motion, he executed the first style of the Liu family's heaven and earth palm, fierce dragon grappling strike. His palm struck the wolf's chin, sending the beast hurtling through the air. Yet the blue wolf was undeterred. Shaking off the blow as if it were nothing, the beast regained its footing almost instantly, already preparing for another attack. Liu's mind raced. Facing a monster like this without his spear put him at a severe disadvantage. And then realization struck. If the wolf wasn't after him, there was only one other target. His heart pounded. The wolf wasn't retreating. It was heading straight for the house. Panic surged through him as he watched the beast sprint toward his home. Without hesitation, he launched himself forward, pushing his body to its limits in a desperate chase. Just before the creature could reach the entrance, he threw himself beneath it and delivered a powerful kick, sending it soaring once more before it slammed into the ground. Not wasting a second, Liu dashed inside and seized his spear. A surge of cold fury coursed through him. The thought of the beast targeting his granddaughter filled him with rage. Emerging onto the rooftop, he locked eyes with the wolf, its glowing blue gaze burning with malice. Neither moved. The tension thickened as both predator and warrior assessed each other. Then, in an unexpected turn, the blue wolf took a step back. Slowly, it retreated into the shadows of the forest. Liu's grip on his spear tightened. Something was wrong. The blue wolf was not a creature known for abandoning its prey. This wasn't a retreat, it was a delay. The battle wasn't over. The wolf would return. A heavy silence fell as Liu considered the situation. If it had been just him, avoiding unnecessary bloodshed would have been the logical choice. But with Sial in danger, leaving wasn't an option. The land they had cultivated, the home they had built, none of it could be abandoned so easily. Then another thought crossed his mind. The Black Mountain Blade bandits would be in danger too. If the wolf was this relentless, it wouldn't stop with just one hunt. With his decision made, Liu set off toward the bandits' hideout. Approaching cautiously, his sharp eyes noticed the broken wooden wall. An ominous quiet lingered in the air. Something was wrong. Stepping through the gap in the wall, he found a grim scene. A lone survivor stood among the fallen, carefully covering the bodies of his comrades. The leader of the Black Mountain Blade bandits, Peng Ho, lifted his head at Liu's arrival. "I knew you'd come eventually," he said, his tone grim. Liu's gaze swept over the carnage. He had come to warn them, but it seemed he was too late. The blue wolf had already struck. That creature had invaded a bandit stronghold and slaughtered its inhabitants, a massacre unlike any typical predator attack. Peng Ho's expression darkened. This wasn't mere hunting. The beast had killed for pleasure. This wasn't a wolf, it was a demon. A troubling realization set in. At this rate, the bandits wouldn't even survive long enough to face the looming threat of the Wudang sect's retaliation. Liu turned to leave, offering a simple warning. Peng Ho, however, called out after him. The conversation quickly turned to Liu's past. His name was on wanted posters, labeled a dangerous fugitive. Yet the bandits showed no interest in turning him in. To them, the so-called madman from the Murim Alliance's records was simply an old warrior protecting his granddaughter. The vice leader, however, spoke up with desperation. They didn't seek help against the Wudang sect. What they wanted was Liu's assistance in dealing with the blue wolf. If they could work together, they might have a chance at survival. And in turn, they could help protect the home Liu had fought to maintain. Liu's gaze sharpened. If the wolf had come from a particular direction, then there was a way to trap it. The bandits would need to mobilize immediately, gathering water, tree branches, and straw bales. Confused, Peng Ho questioned the plan, but Liu's instructions were firm. The preparation had to begin at once. And one more thing, a crucial role had to be assigned. Someone needed to act as bait. Silence fell over the group. Liu's eyes landed on the vice leader. Without hesitation, he pointed. Someone plump, juicy enough that a single bite would burst with flavor. All eyes turned to the vice leader, who, bewildered, pointed at himself. Liu didn't wait for an answer. The plan was already in motion. By nightfall, the trap was set. The vice leader stood near the broken wall, shifting uncomfortably in his role as bait. In the distance, two glowing blue lights emerged from the darkness. The blue wolf had arrived. With forced bravado, the vice leader shouted, challenging the beast. The wolf charged with terrifying speed, but at the last moment the man dodged aside. The beast adjusted midair, but its landing proved disastrous. The ground beneath it collapsed, sending it plummeting into the pit. The archers surrounding the hole loosed their arrows, but the wolf deflected them effortlessly, clawing its way upward. Spears followed, driving the beast back down. Despite the barrage, the wolf's determination remained unbroken. It would escape. It was only a matter of time. Liu's voice cut through the chaos. "Step aside." Leaping into the pit, he brandished his spear. Flames licked along the blade's edge, illuminating the darkness. With deadly precision, Liu and the blue wolf charged at each other, their movements like two unstoppable forces on a collision course. As soon as Liu and the blue wolf clashed, a massive explosion erupted from the ground. Without wasting a moment, Peng Ho commanded the others to seal the pit. The bandits rushed forward, swiftly covering the hole with thick logs. Though the explosion had not been fatal, the blue wolf's body was severely injured. More importantly, trapped within the narrow pit, the beast could only struggle with its front paws at best. Liu confidently defended against its attacks, his spear meeting the desperate swipes of the wolf's claws. The bandits watched anxiously, waiting for the outcome. Silence fell inside the pit. Unable to contain their curiosity, they cautiously removed the logs to peek inside. What they saw left them stunned. Liu sat atop the lifeless blue wolf, his body covered in blood. Without missing a beat, he told them to quit starring and pull him out. With the beast finally slain, the bandits erupted in celebration. Liu, however, found himself lost in thought. It had been a long time since he had felt like this. Memories of his younger days surfaced, but they quickly faded as he returned to the present. Back at the shabby old house, he gazed at Xiao, who was sleeping soundly. A sense of relief washed over him. At least now, they could continue staying in their home. He glanced at the glowing blue gem in his hand, the inner core of the blue wolf, a powerful artifact capable of granting immense inner chi upon absorption. However, it carried a deadly risk. If misused, it could lead to chi deviation or even instant death. Just then, Xiao's voice called out, addressing him as Grandpa. He turned to her, surprised to see her awake. She immediately reached for the glowing core, her curiosity evident. Liu stopped her, warning that it was not something to eat. At that moment, a sharp pain struck his body. His vision blurred as he reached into his sleeve for a nerve suppression pill, quickly swallowing it. However, as he did, the wolf's core slipped from his grasp. A sinking feeling overtook him. The core was dangerous. He had to retrieve it, but before he could act, his body gave out and he lost consciousness. Liu Jinshan woke up sometime later, unsure of how long he had been out. His first thought was the inner core. Frantically, he looked at Xiao. She met his gaze and with a cheerful expression simply said, "Delicious." Panic surged through him. He immediately tried to suppress the core's energy within her, fearing the worst. By all logic, her Danshan should have exploded, taking her life with it, but she remained unharmed. Could it be? Did her unique immortal sound body constitution neutralize the core's toxicity? Even so, if she failed to absorb it completely, it could still kill her. He quickly assisted in circulating her inner chi, guiding it through the proper meridians. The changes in her body were astonishing. The impregnable conception vessel and governing vessel had been unclogged. The toxicity of the core vanished, merging seamlessly with her constitution. True chi radiated from her, and her middle Danshan fully opened. Liu's eyes widened. This wasn't just an increase in chi, it was body reconstruction. A child who had only just been born into this world was now being reborn anew. Xiao's small body levitated, glowing with a green energy so intense that the entire house was bathed in its light. Liu shielded his eyes, unable to comprehend the sheer magnitude of what was happening. When the glow finally faded, Xiao was different. She was still herself, yet something had changed. Liu cautiously extended a hand, asking if she was all right. Before he could even blink, Xiao vanished from sight. Moments later, he spotted her darting across the room at an incredible speed. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. Just days ago, she had barely been able to walk, and now she was running like a seasoned martial artist. Even he, after dedicating his entire life to cultivating inner chi, had never achieved body reconstruction. Yet Xiao had done it first. Liu couldn't help but chuckle, as expected of his granddaughter. Stepping outside, he found a bag of food resting near the house. He recognized the gesture immediately. "Those punks from the Black Mountain Blade brought us meat again," he muttered. "They barely have enough to eat themselves." With a sigh, he decided they should be grateful and enjoy it while they could. As he cooked the meat over a fire, Xiao continued dashing around, her excitement showing no signs of fading. He smiled, amused. The past few days had been eventful, and she was clearly reveling in her newfound abilities. His thoughts shifted. If he remembered correctly, wasn't the Wudang sect's punitive force supposed to arrive soon? His mind wandered back to a conversation he had with Peng Ho. The bandit leader had revealed that they were once soldiers, about 10 years ago. They had deserted, refusing to partake in their superior General Yang Yu's rebellion. Liu had simply responded that they had made their decision based on their beliefs. They weren't at fault for following their conscience. Peng Ho had nodded, explaining that even after hiding in the mountains, they had never harmed civilians. Instead, they only targeted corrupt officials and the merchants who colluded with them. Now, back in the present, Liu wondered, who was he to help them when he had his own problems to worry about? Until he achieved body reconstruction himself, he had no choice but to live cautiously, holding his breath in the shadows. Xiao suddenly ran into him at full speed, causing them both to tumble to the ground. As he looked at her, he realized she had fallen asleep mid-motion. She must have been exhausted. Gazing at her peaceful face, he made a silent vow. Even if it was normal for someone his age to give up on body reconstruction, for Xiao's sake, he would never give up. A sudden shift in the air made him tense. They were here. One of the 9 great sects, one of the great clans. Wudang sect. Just hearing their name filled him with anger. They were a great force within the Muram alliance, the very group suspected of destroying his family. One of the bandits knelt on the ground, defeated, a sword pressed against his neck. The Wudang martial artists demanded to know the location of the bandit hideout, threatening to kill him if he didn't comply. Corpses of his comrades littered the ground, their limbs severed one by one. The bandit refused their offer, choosing death over revealing the location of his base. The martial artist swung his sword, aiming to sever the bandit's hand. However, just as the blade was about to land, a spear shot forward, intercepting the attack with precise timing. Annoyed, the martial artist turned his gaze toward the one who had interfered and demanded, "Who dares to block my strike?" With an air of indifference, Liu simply replied, "I'm just their neighbor."
Don't miss out on more amazing stories. Hit that subscribe button and stay updated with the best recaps every week.
The Wudang martial artists glared at Liu, silently warning him to stay out of their business. To them, he was nothing more than an outsider, ignorant of the situation. Whatever had happened to these bandits was none of his concern. Liu remained silent for a moment before letting out a faint sigh. Weren't neighbors supposed to help each other in times of need? His mind drifted back to his battle with the Blue Wolf, and inevitably to the night his family was massacred. What if someone had stepped forward back then? Could things have been different? His grip on the spear tightened. These so-called martial artists belonged to the Wudang sect, a key faction within the Muram alliance, the very alliance suspected of orchestrating his family's downfall. And yet, they had the audacity to claim he was the one who didn't understand the situation. Liu's gaze sharpened as he pointed his spear at them. The Wudang disciples exchanged uneasy glances before speaking telepathically. "Senior brother, isn't that old man the patriarch of the Liu family, the one wanted by the Muram alliance?" The senior disciple studied Liu for a moment. The unusual spear, the child secured on his back, it all matched the rumors. "It has to be him. This is a golden opportunity. If we take him down, we'll make names for ourselves. He's been retired for years. This will be easy. The only thing to be careful of is the child. The Muram alliance ordered that she be taken back unharmed." Liu observed their hushed conversation and let out a cold, distant chuckle. Lowering his spear slightly, he spoke. They were still young, with long lives ahead of them. He was willing to give them a chance. One of the Wudang disciples lunged without hesitation, his sword aimed straight for Liu's heart. Liu moved calmly. In a swift motion, he gripped his spear with his mouth, using it as leverage to pivot his body. With an effortless swing, he struck. A sickening crack echoed in the air. The attacker's head twisted unnaturally, rotating a full 270 degrees before his body crumpled lifelessly to the ground. The second disciple froze in terror, his breath caught in his throat. Liu wasted no time. Using the first victim as a shield, he pierced straight through the corpse, impaling the second disciple in the same motion. Now both bodies hung skewered on his spear, like a shish kebab. His gaze remained indifferent as he muttered, "I gave you your chance." With that, he let the bodies slide off his spear. The blood pooling beneath them seemed to form an invisible line, one that could never be crossed again. From this moment forward, Wuding, Liu, and the Black Mountain Blade were entangled in a web of bloodshed and vengeance. A foolish, vicious cycle of revenge. Liu exhaled, this never-ending pursuit of vengeance. How could anyone escape it? Even he, despite everything, could not stop. Not until his family's wrongs were avenged. At the Black Mountain Blade's hideout, the injured bandits stumbled in, carrying the lifeless bodies of the two Wuding disciples. Liu entered alongside them, his expression unreadable. One of the bandits, Sangu, announced their return with a triumphant grin, declaring that the elder had taken care of those Wuding rats. The hideout erupted in cheers. Their spirits soared, not just because they had won, but because Liu, the elder, had chosen to stand with them. However, Liu swiftly shut down their celebration. He hadn't agreed to help them yet. He had seen true masters of the Wuding sect before, back when he roamed Jianghu. If they had come instead of these rookies, an inescapable disaster would have fallen upon them all. Peng Ho, the bandit leader, still took a moment to express his gratitude. Despite Liu's words, they all knew his actions had saved them. Liu, however, remained focused. He turned to the leader and asked if there was any new information about the enemy's forces. Peng Ho nodded. With 2 now dead, 8 remained. Among them, however, were first-generation disciples. Liu's expression darkened. If they were first-generation disciples, that meant they were first-rate masters, warriors who had already mastered sword chi. These were not opponents to be taken lightly. Liu looked Peng Ho in the eye. The only one here capable of fighting against such foes was someone like him, someone trained in true martial arts. So Liu asked, "What's your strategy?" Peng Ho hesitated before responding, but his answer was disappointing. There was no real strategy, only the hope of using the barricade as a shield and holding out for as long as possible. Liu shook his head. No matter how thick or high the barricade is, it won't matter against martial artists who wield sword chi. Arrows will be useless against them. If we stay on the defensive, we'll be slaughtered. His gaze swept across the bandits. There were too many people here to simply hide and survive. No, the only way forward was to fight smart. Just like when we killed the Blue Wolf, we need to lure these bastards in, surround them, and crush them. The bandit leader hesitated, but nodded slightly. Liu continued, "You were once government troops, weren't you? That means you received sufficient training in ambush tactics." The leader exhaled, his confidence returning. "I am skilled in ambushing, but won't the first-generation disciples sense our presence?" Liu smirked, glancing at the 2 lifeless Taoists lying beside them. "It doesn't matter, that's why I brought these 2 here." The bandits followed his gaze, realization dawning on them. All we have to do is kill a few of them before they can set up their Wuding sword formation. If we strike first, they won't get the chance. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, the Wuding sect's punitive force moved cautiously. The Taoist leading them suddenly raised a hand, signaling the group to halt. His sharp eyes scanned the area. Something was off. "Their base is way too quiet," he murmured. A younger disciple frowned. Could they have already run away? "Nonsense," another snapped. "They wouldn't have fought us if they planned to flee." At the front of the group stood the leader of the punitive force, Qing Jin, a first-generation disciple of the Wuding sect. He clicked his tongue in irritation. "Idiots, they're lying in ambush behind their barricade." A female disciple stepped forward, concern written across her face. "Senior brother Qing Jin, there are more than 100 bandits in that hideout. Will we be okay?" Ching Ho, another first-generation disciple, scoffed. If that's the case, we'll just wipe them all out in one go. Another senior disciple turned to her. They say you're the most talented among the second-generation disciples. His tone was mocking but expectant. Go first. Let's see how skilled you really are. The female disciple's expression hardened. Yes, understood, senior brother. She approached the barricaded entrance, her eyes narrowing as she examined the scene before her. Something caught her attention, two Taoists, bound in chains and kneeling. A man stood beside them, his posture relaxed but his presence undeniably dangerous. His voice rang out, carrying an eerie calmness. Intimidate them. He motioned toward the prisoners. Tell them to watch carefully, because this is what will happen to them if they don't get lost. Liu stood over the kneeling Taoists, his expression cold and unwavering. Without hesitation, he swung his spear. The first Taoist's head flew through the air, rolling down the cliffside, stopping near the feet of the Wudang disciples below. A stunned silence filled the air. Ching Ho's face contorted with rage. Without thinking, he began storming toward Liu, his grip on his sword tightening. Haiyan He reached out, stopping him. Senior brother, please wait, aren't they both already dead? Ching Ho's eyes narrowed. He pointed at the second Taoist. He's still alive. They must have poisoned him, keeping him weak so he can't use his strength. Before Haiyan He could respond, Liu swung his spear again. The second Taoist's body fell limp. Ching Ho let out a furious roar and charged at Liu with all his might. Liu's eyes remained calm as he shifted his stance at the last second, effortlessly changing the trajectory of his attack. Their weapons clashed. Ching Ho barely managed to block the incoming spear, but his eyes widened. The trajectory had changed mid-strike. Liu raised an eyebrow, slightly impressed. Not bad, he thought. Ching Ho stabilized his landing and charged forward once more. But Liu suddenly let out a powerful shout, his voice filled with inner chi. The sound disrupted Ching Ho's movement, breaking his momentum. Liu clenched his spear tightly. Now that they've seen my inner chi, the strongest among them will make their move. There's no time to waste. Summoning his spear chi, he attacked without hesitation. Ching Ho immediately switched to a defensive stance, gathering all his strength to block the incoming strike. With a swift, precise thrust, his spear chi effortlessly pierced through Ching Ho's chest, leaving a gaping hole where his heart once was. Liu family spear technique, third movement, flying execution spear. Ching Ho's body collapsed, lifeless. Liu's gaze shifted toward the remaining Wudang disciples. As expected, the strongest among them made his move. Qing Jin, one of the top first-generation disciples, charged forward with blinding speed. His swordsmanship was impeccable, his movements flawless. Liu barely had time to react, raising his spear just in time to block the incoming strike. The moment their weapons clashed, Liu was launched backward, his arms trembling from the sheer force. His eyes narrowed. His strength is incredible. Even though his inner chi isn't as strong as mine, his power is undeniable. Qingjin glanced at Haiyan He and shouted, "Come to your senses, run away." But before he could say another word, a blade suddenly pierced through his back. Qingjin's breath hitched in his throat as he looked down at the sword sticking out of his chest. His head turned, his eyes filled with shock. It wasn't Haiyan He. It was someone else. A strangled scream of agony tore from his throat. In that very moment, Liu lunged forward, driving his spear straight into Qingjin's chest. The dying man's eyes widened in horror. Liu's voice was icy cold. Didn't you also come here to massacre others like insects, all in the name of revenge? His grip tightened on his spear. Think carefully about that on your way to the afterlife. With one final motion, Liu and the bandit leader tore Qingjin's body to pieces. Qingwu stood frozen, his anger flaring like an unrestrained wildfire. The realization struck deep. 2 first-generation disciples of the revered Wudang sect had been slaughtered, not by skilled martial artists, but by mere bandits. His fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The thought of such dishonor enraged him beyond words. Determined to avenge the fallen, he commanded his remaining disciples to retaliate. Their fierce cries echoed through the valley as they charged toward the bandit base. The bandit leader, sensing the impending danger, turned toward Liu with urgency, suggesting that he should retreat. However, before any response could be given, Qing Wu's scornful glare cut through the air. He exuded pure contempt, regarding the bandits as nothing more than insects beneath his feet. The Wudang disciples surged forward, poised to strike, but the ground beneath them gave way. A massive pit trap, concealed with expert precision, swallowed several warriors whole. The bandit leader's grin widened at the unexpected success, his amusement evident as he noted that even a mystical creature had been caught among them. Some disciples reacted swiftly, narrowly escaping the pit, only to find themselves within the sights of archers who had taken their positions. Despite the ambush, Qing Wu remained composed, rallying the surviving disciples and preparing the supreme ultimate 7 stars formation. Yet even as they hesitated, questioning the feasibility of such a technique with their dwindling numbers, the cruel hand of fate intervened. An arrow found its mark, piercing through one of them before he could finish speaking. Blood pooled beneath his fallen form. A storm of arrows descended upon them. The remaining disciples scrambled for cover, while Qing Wu instinctively unleashed a technique that formed a protective barrier of qi, deflecting the deadly projectiles. Seizing the moment, Liu advanced, his spear thrusting forward with unerring precision. The blade punctured Qing Wu's chest, leaving the first disciple of Wudang staggering in disbelief. The fall of their strongest warrior marked the turning point. The bandits swarmed, overwhelming the remaining disciples with ruthless efficiency. Blades clashed, blood was spilled, and within moments the battle had ended. One survivor, desperate to escape, fled into the wilderness, his terrified screams filling the night air. The bandit leader pursued, ready to end the chase, but Liu acted first. With a flicker of qi, his spear found its target. The fleeing disciple collapsed, his life snuffed out before he could make good on his desperate vow for vengeance. Cold and resolute, Liu dismissed the idea of mercy, believing any who sought revenge should do so in the afterlife. Turning back to his men, the bandit leader sought answers regarding the 2 disciples who had fallen into the pit. The vice leader reported that one had perished amidst the arrow storm, but the other, an injured woman, had miraculously survived. Upon closer inspection, realization dawned upon the leader. The captive bore the markings of a second-generation Wudang disciple, one whose skill in sword qi had likely saved her life. With a cruel smirk, he ordered her execution, deeming it a fitting punishment for her allegiance. Yet before the archers could loose their arrows, Liu intervened, raising a hand to halt the act. His gaze remained fixed on the wounded disciple as he declared that she would be spared. The decision sent a wave of unease through the ranks, but he remained steadfast. In his mind, only by keeping her alive would the Black Mountain Blade sect have a future. Later, as the bandit leadership convened over tea, discussions turned to their next move. The vice leader, emboldened by victory, suggested holding their ground and fighting to the death if necessary. However, Liu, ever pragmatic, dismissed the notion as arrogance. He reminded them that the Wudang sect's true masters were yet to arrive, and compared to them, the fallen disciples had been little more than reckless fools. He then proposed a plan. Citing a past incident where tensions between Wudang and Manhwa had escalated due to an unfortunate death during a tournament, he saw an opportunity to sow discord. His suggestion was simple yet effective, scattering the belongings of the slain Wudang disciples near Manhwa's territory to fabricate the illusion of an ambush. Though Wudang would not be easily deceived, the mere suspicion and chaos would buy them valuable time to strengthen their position. His companions acknowledged the brilliance of the scheme, though Liu remained dismissive of any notion that he was some scheming villain. As the bandits trained with renewed vigor, Liu observed their efforts but shook his head. Their military martial arts, while effective in large-scale warfare, were ill-suited for the unpredictable world of the Murim. Recognizing the need for proper guidance, he resolved to introduce an alternative approach, though he knew he could not expend too much energy on their training. Meanwhile, the captured Wudang disciple, Haiyan-He, sat within her cell, her expression dark with resentment. Liu regarded her with casual amusement, remarking that she resembled a ghost. Her fury remained unshaken, demanding her release with threats of future vengeance. Liu, unfazed, simply smirked, seeing no reason to grant such a request. Observing her condition, he decided to provide her with a meal. The scent of freshly prepared dishes filled the air, causing her stomach to betray her. Though she attempted to resist, her pride warring with her hunger, the moment a child began devouring the food before her, something within her resolve cracked. Unable to endure the temptation, she lunged at the meal, devouring it with desperate fervor. Watching her surrender to basic needs, Liu chuckled, finding the entire scene rather amusing. Following the meal, he led her outside to a separate chamber. Upon entering, she discovered a clean bath, its warm waters inviting. With hesitation, she eventually relented, washing away the filth of battle and imprisonment. Emerging refreshed, she appeared as a completely different person, though she quickly reminded herself of her dire situation. As she gazed upon the breathtaking mountain landscape, momentarily forgetting her captivity, reality soon came crashing back. Liu informed her that it was time to return to her cell and her blood-stained garments. A dark expression crossed her face as she muttered her refusal, acknowledging that his small acts of kindness had made her imprisonment all the more unbearable. Her voice trembled as she admitted the cruel truth. Had she been treated harshly from the beginning, she would have endured without faltering. But now, having glimpsed even a fraction of comfort, she found herself unwilling to return to the cold confinement. Rather than face such torment, she murmured that she would rather die. Liu regarded her for a long moment before making a final proposition. He declared that the opportunity to experience such days again was possible, but only in exchange for something of equal value. The realization sent a wave of dread through her as she recoiled in horror, barely able to form words before he swiftly pressed her pressure points. Her body went limp, collapsing into his grasp. As she drifted into unconsciousness, his voice resonated in the silence, hinting at the inevitable truth. The Black Mountain Blade sect had plans for her, and soon enough she would come to understand exactly what they desired. Hye lay on the pile of hay inside her prison cell, still dressed in her bloodied clothes. Her dull eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, lost in thought. She dreamt of the food, the bath, the fresh mountain air, everything she had experienced. But the moment she woke up, it all felt like a cruel illusion. Her lifeless expression mirrored that of a soulless husk. Liu's words echoed in her mind, reminding her that such comforts could be hers every day if she provided something of equal value. Frustration twisted her face as she rejected the possibility, unwilling to consider it. The thought of what he wanted made her shudder. A voice snapped her out of her thoughts. Liu had returned, observing her with a knowing expression. He noted that she had likely spent the entire night thinking about his offer. She responded by rolling onto her side, turning her back to him. He sighed, informing her that he didn't know when he would return. If she had made up her mind, now was the time to speak. Hye bit her lip, wondering if her refusal would mean being locked away until death. Even if she managed to escape and return to Wuding, she questioned whether she would truly be welcomed back. After a long silence, she finally relented, barely whispering her acceptance. Liu's smirk widened as he acknowledged her decision, signaling for her to leave the cell immediately. Outside the prison, the bandits had already gathered in formation, waiting for her. As she approached, their curious gazes weighed on her. She sighed, already aware of what was expected. The request was obvious. She was to teach them martial arts. The bitter truth settled within her. The prestigious swordsmanship of the Wudang sect, where every movement was as valuable as gold, was now something she was meant to pass on. Liu, watching her closely, admitted that her skills were impressive for a second-generation disciple. Even a fraction of Wudang's swordsmanship, if passed on, would be of great benefit to them. However, he warned that the Wudang sect would not be forgiving if they ever discovered this betrayal. Hye exhaled sharply, fully aware of the consequences. As she acknowledged this, memories flooded her mind, the ridicule, the humiliation, the disdain. From the moment she set foot in Wudang, she had been unwanted. When she proved her talent, resentment had replaced pity. Even worse, as she grew older, the elders who once looked down on her began to demand favors. With a deep breath, she resolved herself. The risk of excommunication was preferable to rotting away in a prison cell. The bandit leader stepped forward, his tone laced with unexpected respect as he requested her guidance. The bandits, standing in formation, waited eagerly. Hesitating only briefly, she accepted the sword handed to her and adjusted her stance. Even as she acknowledged the strength of the man before her, the sight of a bandit bowing his head to her felt surreal. Deciding to begin, she demonstrated the movements. The sword cut through the air with precision, her footwork controlled and graceful. When she finished, the bandit stood in awe before erupting into cheers. She calmly explained that the technique was the Clarity Sword Technique, a foundational Wudang skill. Though basic, a strong foundation in it would allow them to compete against first-class sword techniques. With her decision made, she prepared to teach them. Days passed, and inside a small cabin, Hye sat at a wooden table, eating her meal. She had thoroughly taught the Clarity Sword Technique, its principles, movements, and applications. By now, the bandits should be able to cultivate it on their own. As she ate, she noted how well they cooked. Thanks to them, she had eaten well and rested comfortably. She smirked bitterly as she reflected on her time in Wudang. Despite being one of the best among the second-generation disciples, her presence had always been met with coldness. She had known nearly every martial art taught in Wudang, save for the first-class ones, yet had never received this kind of treatment before. Staring at the wooden ceiling, she pondered whether this was what it felt like to be a noble in the imperial palace. Suddenly, something felt off. Through a small crack in the wall, she observed the surroundings. No guards, no detectable energy presences. Her heartbeat quickened. This was her chance. Without hesitation, she leapt over the barricade and landed outside the base. But as she turned to flee, Liu stood directly in her path. Tensing, she reached for her sword, but he simply smirked, cautioning her against getting her outfit dirty. Confusion flickered across her face as he explained that he had worked hard to acquire it for her. She processed his words, slowly realizing that he had kept his promise. He assured her that she was free to walk out the front gate, but questioned where she planned to go. Her grip tightened as uncertainty washed over her. She hadn't considered that part. Liu pointed out that the Wudang sect would never take her back after what she had done. The weight of his statement struck her. If they learned she had taught their swordsmanship to bandits, excommunication would be the least of her worries. Turning to leave, Liu suggested that if she wasn't in a hurry, she could rest until dawn. He would arrange for travel expenses and provisions. She stood frozen as he walked away, his words lingering in her mind. She truly had nowhere to go. The next morning, upon opening the cabin door, she found a bag waiting for her. As expected, he had followed through on his word. Just then, the bandit leader called out to her, and she turned to see the gathered men. At first, she assumed they intended to stop her. However, the leader simply acknowledged that she was leaving. She hesitated, considering whether their sincerity warranted a longer stay, but quickly shook the thought from her mind. The leader chuckled, making it clear that they had no intention of holding her back. Instead, he expressed hope that despite the circumstances of their meeting, she would leave with only good memories. She hesitated again before murmuring something under her breath, though her voice was barely audible. The leader blinked in confusion, and the others leaned in, trying to catch her words. Finally, with growing frustration, she announced that she was staying to teach them the footwork techniques as well. The entire camp fell silent before the bandit leader's expression softened. With genuine gratitude, he requested that she continue to guide them. Her face turned red as she looked away, arms crossed. With a reluctant posture, she accepted the request. The bandits erupted into cheers, their enthusiasm unwavering. From a distance, Liu observed the scene with an amused smirk. He noted how well they actually got along before turning his attention to his grandchild, Xiao. Since things were progressing as expected, it was now time for Xiao to begin learning the spear arts. Half a year later, in the old shabby house, Liu sat deep in thought, his mind weighed down. Despite several Wudang sect disciples vanishing without a trace, the sect had made no movement at all. The question lingered, had the plan worked? Had the Mount Hua sect truly been pitted against Wudang? Or was it possible that neither the sect nor the bandits were considered significant enough to warrant action? There was no way to determine the reason. Right now, however, the most pressing concern was not Wudang, it was Xiao. She sat at the table, her lips pressed into a stubborn pout as she refused to eat. Her gaze flickered to the food in front of her before turning away in defiance. The presence of carrots in the meal was unacceptable to her. Liu, observing the scene, sighed and placed the spoon on the table before turning to leave. He mused aloud about how little she seemed to understand the value of food. At his words, Xiao's eyes widened, her resolve wavering as tears threatened to spill over. Then, just as she appeared ready to break, Liu paused at the door. An alternative was suggested, perhaps a meal of meat porridge instead. Instantly, Xiao's demeanor shifted. The mere mention of it seemed to erase all traces of her earlier defiance, and moments later she was happily eating, savoring each bite. Liu, watching her reaction, smirked. The lesson remained the same, whether it was meat or mushrooms. The final result depended entirely on one's perspective. Outside the house, Liu's training. Seated in meditation, he focused on circulating his inner qi. The urgency weighed heavily on him. He needed to accumulate 180 years worth of inner qi as soon as possible. However, the relentless throbbing in his head remained a constant reminder of his condition. Suppressing the tumor with poison was only a temporary measure. The sooner he achieved body reconstruction, the sooner he could exact revenge and protect Xiao until she was strong enough to stand on her own. Though qi training was crucial, he knew he couldn't afford to neglect martial arts. Rising to his feet, he gripped his spear firmly. It was still too early for Xiao to wield such a weapon, but an introduction to it would be beneficial. With that thought, he called out to her. Xiao looked up in response, her curious gaze fixed on him. He reminded her of how often she had watched him train with the spear and instructed her to observe closely this time. Adjusting his stance, he prepared to demonstrate the Liu family spear techniques. Among all things, wind possessed the most flexible nature. It was for this reason that nothing could disrupt its essence. With that in mind, he moved, each motion fluid yet deliberate. The spear cut through the air, controlled yet powerful in its strikes. While wind remained soft and flexible, when gathered in one place, its force became strong enough to pierce through solid rock. This was the Liu family's annihilating wind spear. As Xiao continued to watch, Liu's thoughts drifted to the past. There was a time when this spear art had been powerful enough to contend for the title of the strongest. At the height of its strength, its wielder had been a legendary expert, the ancestor known as the Spear Demon. Not even the renowned Liang family spear arts had been able to stand against him. His mastery had allowed him to dominate the martial world with the sheer force of the annihilating wind spear. But all of that had changed. After the secret manual left behind by the ancestor had been lost, so too had their power. Now all that remained was the Fire Dragon Divine Spear. The thought lingered, if the manual could be recovered, then perhaps the legacy of the Spear Demon could be revived. Suddenly a small hand tugged at his leg, pulling him from his thoughts. Looking down, he found Xiao staring up at him with wide eyes. Her request was simple, she wanted to wield the spear. Liu raised a brow at the request, chuckling at the determination in her expression. Despite her enthusiasm, the weapon was still far too large for her. Nonetheless, he allowed her to try, handing it over. The moment she gripped it, her tiny hands struggled beneath its weight. As expected, it was simply too heavy. Her face crumpled in frustration, and a sniffle followed soon after. Accusations of wrongdoing were thrown in his direction, causing Liu to flinch in confusion. It took a moment before he noticed a bamboo stick nearby. Picking it up, he offered it to her as an alternative. The moment she took hold of it, her expression brightened once more. With her makeshift weapon in hand, she immediately imitated his stance. Liu smirked at the sight. Her expression carried the determination of an expert. A warning was given to be mindful of her balance, followed by an instruction to follow his lead. As he demonstrated the first movement of the Liu family spear techniques, pursuing extreme flash, he watched to see how she would respond. The technique relied on high-speed movements, leaving opponents with no room to evade. He turned to gauge her reaction, expecting her to at least attempt the footwork. Instead, what he saw was dancing. At first, disbelief settled over him. It seemed as though she was merely playing around, entertaining herself rather than seriously following his instruction. However, the more he observed, the more his expression shifted. The movements, though seemingly random, were not as unstructured as they appeared to be. A realization struck him. The way she maneuvered the bamboo stick perfectly followed the principles of the Liu family spear techniques. A chill ran down his spine as understanding dawned upon him. She had not merely been playing. She had absorbed the technique simply by watching his training. Liu's heart pounded at the implications. Was this the manifestation of the immortal sound body constitution? If she could continue at this rate, then perhaps the resurrection of the spear demon was not just a distant dream. His resolve solidified. From this moment on, he would dedicate himself fully to her training. But just as the thought settled, a sharp pain flared in his back, forcing him to tense. It seemed he had pushed himself too far for the day. With a deep exhale, he decided that the real training would begin tomorrow. In response, Xiao mimicked his actions, clutching her back dramatically and whining in exaggeration. Liu rolled his eyes at her antics. Before he could address her playful behavior, a sudden activation of a trap around the house sent a sound echoing through the air. His body tensed immediately, instinctively reaching for his spear. The presence of intruders was undeniable. But before he could act, a familiar voice called out, asking if he was home. Recognizing it, he allowed himself to relax. Moments later, the visitors entered. The group of bandits stood before him, accompanied by Hye-He. His gaze swept over them before settling on her outfit, an unspoken observation lingering between them. At her signal, the vice leader stepped forward, carrying a bag. A title was spoken, General Manager. Liu scoffed at the absurdity of it. The idea of a second-generation disciple of the Wudang sect taking on such a role among bandits was something he never would have imagined. Hye-He paid no attention to his reaction. Instead, she spoke of the reason for their visit. They had brought wild boar meat, even adding rabbit meat as a bonus. The mere mention of it immediately caught Xiao's attention, excitement flashing across her face. Liu, however, was not interested in pleasantries. His arms crossed as he cut through the formalities, demanding to hear the real reason for their presence. In response, Hye-He's expression darkened. A question was posed, had he not heard the news. At his frown, she continued, Wudang had yet to make a move. But what she said next sent a chill down Liu's spine. Something was happening, something big enough to shake all of Jianghu to its core. Love this recap, smash that like button. Subscribe for more manhwa goodness. Drop a comment with your favorite moment or what I should cover next. See you in the next one.